Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell. And this week, we're going to tackle topics like trust, birth control, and boundaries. Three very important things in the world.
That's what I carry in my purse.
Yeah, right, exactly. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health providers or practitioners. Mm-mm. And you should go to legitimate mental health practitioners if you are experiencing mental health things, because yes. Sierra and I are not the answer. I love when people write in and they're like, "You're my therapy." And I'm like, no, we're not. we are just two random strangers who have a lot of opinions on things.
Yes. We are unqualified. We are under-accredited. We are not professional relationship help people at all. We are just two people here to offer our humble musings to hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs on this incredibly rewarding but mostly confusing experience that is love. So please take our advice as you see fit in your life. All right. So this week's check-in topic is just some business, some exciting announcement about Just Break Up behind the scenes. We are changing up our Patreon subscriber options. If you don't know what Patreon is, it's a platform that helps creators like us be supported by our patrons, by our listeners, folks like you all, where you get to subscribe for a small amount monthly or annually and get some exclusive content, special rewards for that. You can cancel at any time. And this is really one of the most direct ways you can go to support Sam and I for doing this work for you and for providing the primary episode, the episode that you're listening to right now, for free all the time. And Spencer, support Spencer. So for $5, for just $5 a month, that's like what, a small latte at this point. I cannot believe how much coffee is these days, by the way. I feel 1,000 years old saying that, but
the bougie coffee shop that I sometimes go to charges like $4.50 for just an Americano. And I'm like, that's just espresso and water.
When you have to spend $10 to get two small simple beverages, like whatever. Anyway. Okay. For just $5 a month, so one latte a month, you can get access to a bonus exclusive episode where Sam and I take a deep dive into listeners' letters and topics like family relationships, workplace dynamics, friendship breakups, and if we're being honest, like we often do BuzzFeed quizzes, and silly.
Yeah, sometimes you really phone it in.
No, silly, not phone it in. It's just like a little bit more casual. It's definitely more intimate. Like we definitely have more intimate conversations on these bonus episodes. In addition to this bonus weekly episode, you'll also get a backlog of 100+ episodes and video recordings of us. So if you want to see our faces, go check that out.
Yeah, this is a change from the current $5 level. So if you already are subscribing on Patreon for $5, you will now also get that video content as well, which was usually only for the $10 level. Yeah. But we're mixing things up, people. Things are changing.
Speaking of.
So now for $10 a month, in addition to everything you get in the $5 a month bracket, so the bonus episode, video and audio, you'll also get access to an exclusive monthly live stream with me and Sierra, where we'll do like Ask Me Anythings, Q&As, interviews, anything that we really want to do. It's like, because it's our podcast and not yours. But like, we'll do a whole bunch of stuff.
We'll hang out with you once a month.
Yeah. It'll be like, when we do our Instagram lives, but we'll do it on Patreon. And so folks who subscribe at $10 a month will get access to those things. And then also you'll get an ad-free version of the primary episode. So if you're tired of listening to us read ads, guess what? You now have an option. You can get rid of that for only $10 a month.
Yeah. Again, you're like, oh my God, $10 a month. That's a lot more than $5 a month. But we're talking 1.5 lattes. Sam doesn't even get a whole latte. I get a whole one and he gets half because he doesn't drink a lot of caffeine.
That's right. It's got to be decaf. It's got to be decaf.
Yeah. Also, here's another really exciting thing that we're adding to our Patreon is we're now going to be offering annual subscriptions. So if you subscribe, for a one-time fee or whatever at $5 a month, you get 2 months off for free. So that's just $50 once. And for the $10 level, if you subscribe at the $10 level annually, you get 2 months off and you get a guarantee that you will get your letter answered by Sam and I on air or in a private message. So if you are in frantic need of a response from Sam and I, and or you just really want to support us, you want to contribute to the sustainability and health of our show, you want to ensure that you're going to get some awesome content from us for the next year, plus 2 months free. You can subscribe at $10 annually, 2 months off, $20 off, whatever. Can't do math. Yeah, those are our new Patreon levels.
Yeah. We would love if you would support us on this, right? This podcast is free to listen to and now to watch video of, if you're interested in that. But it's not free to make because Sierra and I need to get equipment and we want to be paid for the time that we are putting to this podcast, as well as Spencer.
We want to pay Spencer.
Absolutely. Yes, we definitely want to pay Spencer. And so supporting us on Patreon really just helps us be able to do that.
Yes.
And we also know that $5 a month, $10 a month isn't in people's budgets too. So if you're not able to subscribe, that's also okay. We love you. We welcome you to this podcast. Like, this is also for you. We're just asking folks that have it in their budget and would be able to support so that everyone can continue to get this content for free. So
I love that.
Love you all, no matter if you support us on Patreon or not. And we would love for you all to show us some love by giving us a little money every month so that we can continue to do this in a sustainable way for us.
I love that. You crushed that. Also, Sam briefly mentioned this, but we haven't actually said this. Just so you know, if you want to watch Sam and I record these primary or talk to each other during these primary episodes, we now offer our primary show on YouTube. So you can go and subscribe, Just Break Up Podcast on YouTube, and you can watch these primary episodes be recorded.
Yeah, so you can watch all the weird gestures and facial expressions we make at each other.
Yeah. Also, there's a closed captioning option on YouTube, which won't be always accurate, but I know that definitely helps folks out. So we wanted to shout that out. Anyway, as Sam said, we love you regardless, always. Thanks for listening. We fucking love doing this show, and we love our community. You want to get into these letters? I think we got some good ones this week. We always have good ones.
Yes, let's do it. All right, our first letter comes from a sad pile of dust, whose pronouns are she, her, who is writing from a whole jar of pickles.
Excellent intonation. A sad pile of dust.
Sad pile of dust. Can you believe that little sad pile of dust? It's writing us a letter.
Oh my God. What a cool sentient little pile.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay.
Where'd
you get those thumbs, pile of dust?
How are you doing this? Do you have little hands?
It's going to be a really long but fun episode.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Sad pile of dust writes, Dear Sam and Sierra, I wrote a whole version of this letter that is a fucking novel because the situation has so much history. So believe it or not, this is a shorter version. I'm in worse than a pickle. I'm in a whole jar of them. Basically, I'm a 21-year-old she, her in a relationship with a 21-year-old he, him. Let's call him Eric. And I have a best friend and roommate, same age, she, her. Let's call her Amy. The three of us lived together in winter 2020 through summer 2021, so the pandemic was in full swing. She and I have medical issues and family with medical issues that makes us all, understandably, the most cautious of the virus. He comes from a family that is very much the opposite, though he himself is pretty safe as far as people our age go. However, at a certain point, there were enough disagreements about risk right before vaccines became available that Amy and Eric ended up going from good friends to not speaking. There was so much fighting, and I tried to manage and mitigate and tried to keep the peace in ways that ended up putting more stress on me and didn't actually help. Reading Codependent No More was a real doozy. After that lease ended, he and I broke up. A few months later, we went on a walk to talk about some things and both ended up sharing what we had learned in the time we were apart in the form of accountability and apologies. After a series of similar walks, we ended up deciding we wanted to try again. And I'm happy to say that about 6 months in, we've been putting all that growth into action and we are doing really well. So here's the problem. I am worried deeply about getting back together with Eric because I know his actions hurt Amy. They hurt me too, but he and I worked through things in a way that I'm really okay with, and he has shown up for me differently since. They're never going to get that experience, and she isn't interested in it. When she and I talked about it, she was so graceful. She told me that she was okay and that she'd left it in the past. I felt like I didn't deserve a friend or housemate like that. For the whole time of Eric's and my new relationship, they haven't seen each other, and that's my doing. I've kept them totally separate. Until today. He came by to drop something off, and she came home an hour earlier than I thought she would. The lock in the door turned, and he literally sprinted out of the room because he knows how fucking much I get stressed out to think that they'll see each other. But she totally saw. So I said, Eric's here, sorry. And she was like, yeah, I know. He doesn't need to go hide. I've never been so embarrassed and ashamed. She obviously felt so awkward. Yeah, I can't tell you how gross the fabric of the air of that situation was, and I'm leaving out a lot of details for brevity. He left, and she and I both left the house and came back and talked later. I said that I know I'm projecting my shame onto both of you, and that isn't fair because you've both expressed to me on several occasions that this is fine, you just really don't want to see each other. She expressed that she feels like she must be a monster for me to feel so freaked out, and I tried to reassure her that she's only been wonderful. She told me that she wasn't mad at me, but that she was sad for me and very uncomfortable with the sneaking around because she hates that quality most in any person, and she was feeling isolated again. She went home for the weekend to take some space. Sam and Sierra, what I'm struggling with here is comprised of two things. One, how do I reconcile things with myself? I go to therapy, I read, I'm trying to get better at boundaries. I know that my past trauma works into this and how. I repeat to myself what y'all said one time, which was to turn that shame into guilt and guilt into acceptance. But I can't, because even though I accept my decision for myself and my life because he and I did the work together, I feel like I'm making a decision on her behalf to have him exist in her space when they did not do the healing together. And that feels fundamentally wrong to me. I feel like a bad friend. And in doing all this shit to try and keep her from having to be a strong and kind for me, I've actually been a much worse friend. I don't know how to be a good friend. I don't know what to do. Number two, I don't know how to accept love after I've done something wrong. After this incident, I also apologized to Eric for making this more difficult than it needs to be and projecting so much stress that his response was to run out of the room when she came in. He was so kind to me about it and so loving, and I felt physically uncomfortable with that. And it's the same reason that I couldn't take Amy at her word that she was okay in the first place. I was taught by other friendships and relationships that I'd be punished for tiny mistakes. So when someone doesn't yell at me or punish me or give me the silent treatment or hold it over my head, I feel like A, they're not telling me the truth and it'll be a sneak attack. B, they'll resent me later. C, the universe will punish me in some other way because they're not doing it. So I guess I just punish myself in that way, and I don't know how to stop. I know that the only thing left to do is change. I try to do better, but what if it is too late? What if the damage to Amy's trust in this friendship has been done? What if I can't do it? Something I've worked through and am working on lately is that I'm not perfect and cannot be. I was always praised for being the kindest, best person, but surprise, I just didn't have any boundaries. When I heard on the show about how we get scared someone will see us for the horrible person we know that we are, that hit home. So yeah, I don't know how to have messed up this friendship and come back from the ashes of it. I was already at a huge mental low, mentally and physically, and this made me feel like a shell of a person. I feel like I have nothing kind or of value to offer her, and it will make me deeply uncomfortable if she decides to be my friend in a real way after this. And if she doesn't, I'll hate myself forever. So either way, I'm fucked unless I figure out the shame spiral I'm in. I already go to therapy and I've already pinpointed where I was taught these things. I just feel like I've been making the same mistakes for years and that I have nothing to offer a friendship that's been hurt like this in the middle of an ongoing pandemic in which we're both depressed and anxious anyway. I'm at a loss and I will literally take any help. I feel so terrible for hurting them, Amy especially. I could write a letter 3 times as long about how much I value you both and how I want to be your friends, and you make me feel less lonely and more hopeful in times when it's been very hard for me to find friends with whom I feel safe. I hope you're well. I love you and thank you regardless of your answer. With love, Dust.
Oh, Dusty. Little pile of dust. I just want to scoop
Little
you
sad
up.
pile of dust.
I just want to scoop you up in a dustbin, and
then do what?
I don't know. Snuggle you.
Snuggle. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So thank you so much for writing, Dust. Take a deep breath with me. We love you, and you did a good job writing this letter. Like, there's so much shame spiraling going on. I can hear you being like, I didn't write this letter well enough, or I left things out, or I said too much, or whatever. Like, hey, all of you is welcome here. And you did a good job representing yourself and your loved ones. So let's just dive in. I know you have possibly been told this, but I want to reiterate it 100 times because this was a lesson that I learned late in life and I'm still trying to like learn or apply. Other people's experiences, other people's feelings with one another or about one another are not your responsibility. You are not responsible for how other people heal and move on in their lives and find happiness. Can we affect one another's feelings? Yes. Is it nice to make someone feel good? Yes. But we are at our core of our humanity. We are not responsible for other people's emotions. We are not responsible for other people's healing and their happiness.
Right.
And especially in this context of a friendship, being a good friend doesn't mean relinquishing anything that causes your friend any emotion that isn't happiness. Like being a good friend isn't being a neutral friend, right? Being a good friend isn't accommodating your life so that they don't have to deal with your life, right? I don't think you're doing anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong getting back with this person. That is your autonomous freedom to seek out happiness and change in your life. You did not do anything hurtful to your friend by going back with this person. I don't think so, right? Period.
I don't think so.
And being a good friend definitely doesn't mean like aligning your life in a way that doesn't cause them harm. Even if you did, like, even if she said, you know what, I really don't like that you're with this person, you still didn't do anything wrong. That's those feelings of her potentially not liking this relationship, or let's just keep it in reality, not liking your boyfriend, those are her responsibility. That's her responsibility, right?
Yep. No, absolutely. And I think that it's also important to say that like what Sierra and I are not saying in this moment is to like never take other people's feelings into account, right?
Yes,
like,
that's not okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like there's like a balance here of being like, yeah, I'm not, I can't control other people's feelings, and like we can take them into account, and we can also own up to when we have done something that has hurt people's feelings, right? Like that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is like trying to release you from this idea that your job is to make everyone happy, and that the things that you do are the only thing that are impacting other people's happiness as well, right? Like,
right.
It's not. There's a million bajillion factors that are going into whether or not Amy is happy in this moment, and you are one of them, right?
Yes.
You may be a big one in some moments, and you may be a tiny fraction of one in other moments, right?
Yes.
So like holding that and recognizing that like Sierra said, being a good friend doesn't mean that you like only ever make your friend happy, but being a good friend is about like receiving and believing what the other person is feeling and asking of you, right? And saying like, okay, you're telling me that it's okay if you two run into each other, right? Like you're telling me like you don't want to be friends with him, but like we don't need to sneak around, like you can do this. So like it's about saying like, okay, great. Thank you for asking or telling me what you need. We can make that happen, right? And not be imposing this idea of, I don't believe you. You're clearly lying. You're clearly more upset than you are, right? Like she's an adult. She can regulate her own emotions. She can figure out how she needs to take care of herself if she doesn't want to be around this person, right? Like, it's not like you're like, hey, you have to be friends with him and you have to be around him. You're just like, yeah, we're going to live our lives, and that means he's going to be here sometimes. And I recognize that that's hard for you. And let me know what I can do to help you navigate this because you're both important to me.
Yeah. And we're also not saying like that this is not uncomfortable. Like the times like in your life, Sam, have you been like not the third wheel, but the middle party,
absolutely.
And it's uncomfortable. It's stressful. That's where this people pleasing codependency comes out, right? Where you're like, well, I just want this to go away. I can swallow it so that they don't have to deal with this discomfort or whatever,
Yeah.
Well,
But like you just held up a mirror to me. So
Yeah. Well, it's we do that because we think we can withstand it and other people shouldn't have to because we are the imposing ones, right? So we're definitely not saying like I should have led with this is deeply uncomfortable. It's really hard to be the middle person. I'm proud of you for even feeling the self-assuredness of being like, no, I want to give this relationship another try because I think me in a past life would be like, nope, I'm never going to find happiness again. Never going to have, like I would have ghosted them both. I would have been like, peace, can't deal with this. Right. And I just want to say, yes, this is difficult. A living situation in which these tensions exist, that's so hard. And so you're also not a bad person or a bad friend for feeling stressed out about this because it's stressful, period. It's stressful. Even if, Sam said what I wanted to say, which is believe your friend. She said she can handle this. She just doesn't want to be friends with him. So you have to take her at her word. And also, it's going to be uncomfortable. It just is. But discomfort gets less uncomfortable the more we are familiar with it, the more we lean into it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's that idea of course, this is uncomfortable. And of course, you're having trouble believing your friend, right? Because you said, you've had 21 years of experience of people not telling you their full emotions or saying something's okay and it's not, and then using it against you. And so like, yeah, of course you're having trouble with this, right? Because you've been taught a different way this whole time. And much like it is when we try and learn something new, right? Like if we were going to learn how to knit, like, would we expect ourselves to be perfect at it? No, we're probably going to make mistakes. It's probably going to be challenging. We're going to use our hands in ways that we're not used to.
Especially if we were taught to knit in the wrong way. For however many years.
Yes, and we're trying to do it again or learn how to do it again. And so just give yourself some grace in this moment to say, like, I'm noticing this thing coming up in me, this deep shame around this. And of course I'm feeling this shame, right? I was taught that's how I'm supposed to respond to things when I've done something wrong, or how I'm supposed to respond when my friends are uncomfortable is to feel a deep shame, to feel like it's my fault, to feel like I need to fix it. Like, yeah, absolutely. Yes. Of course I'm feeling this.
Yeah.
And recognize the fact that like that feeling isn't probably going to go away, right? Like it's probably going to continue to come up. And the goal is not to get rid of the feeling. The goal is to respond to the feeling differently, right? Yes. To say like, oh, hello, I recognize you. Yep,
hey,
that's
self-loathing.
shame.
What's up, girl?
Here it is.
Long time no see. Just kidding. Saw you yesterday.
Exactly. Saw you 5 minutes ago. Right. And recognizing like, oh, yep, here it is. That is a familiar thing to me. It's because of what I've been taught about the world. It's trying to protect me. And I have the opportunity to choose something different because I know that isn't going to work for me in this moment.
Yes.
But like if your marker of success is I never feel this shame come up in me, then you're setting yourself up for something that's never going to happen, right? Wow. And you're setting yourself up for another way to feel shame.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm saying this because I'm like, I'm literally talking to myself right now.
Yeah, was so relatable. I was like, yes, this shame tornado that I get stuck in.
Yeah. Let me ask Peter for the 17th time if he's okay. Are you sure that you're fine?
Did you? Yeah. But also, funny thing, I summarized this letter to Willow this morning, and I was like, essentially, what would you say to me? What would you say to me? And I'll share it in a second.
Perfect.
Yeah, 2 notes before I share what Willow said to me.
Bring her in.
Yeah.
Willow.
She's
Come here.
watching the baby.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You have to have someone that does that. You can't just leave her.
No. What if I just like popped her up in the video and I was like, she's actually on my boob the whole time. That's Patreon, guys. Subscribe, $5 a month.
I would not be surprised if that was what was happening.
Okay, so 2 things that I want you to consider before I share what my wife shared with me. One, you said, your friend was so graceful and she received what you brought to her so well. And you said, I feel like I don't deserve a friend like that. One, you need to believe what your friend is saying to you. And 2, you need to believe that she is your friend. You deserve this friend. You don't
do.
have this friend because you don't deserve her. You have this friend because you enrich her life and because you are a good friend, because you're a deserving person. I would examine why you think you didn't deserve such a nice response. It sounds like you are examining that in therapy and have a good grasp on where that comes from. But like, again, let me stop that thought in its track and say, no. You deserve that response. You don't need to question that response. You don't need to caretake for your friend now because she said, I'm cool with this. Just give me my space, respect my boundaries, and I'm cool with it. That graceful response is yours. It's well deserved. And also, in the end of your letter, you kept musing about like, I know I don't have to be perfect. I know I can make mistakes, but I can't sit with that. I want to offer just like one different perspective. Like, what if this is perfect, right? Like, what if you were like, I am perfect because it's perfectly okay to mess up. I am perfectly okay to make mistakes. This is perfect, right? Because there's no alternative. There's no other level. Let me let you in on a little secret. It's not that you are imperfect and other people are perfect out there. I used to think that, right? I used to think, well, right. I'm just not one of those people that can get it right all the time. Or like, if you love me, you're going to have to deal with all my bullshit because I'm not perfect, right? Guess what? This sounds like a Hallmark card, but there's no perfect. There's no one out there who's better at it than you are because we are all imperfect. We all make mistakes. We all bring stress to other people's lives. So I know it's hard to say I'm perfect because the definition of that word is like without flaws. I get it. Sometimes our brains are like, nope, that doesn't make sense. Or maybe that's our trauma. But what you're seeking, what you're healing yourself from, the idea of like, oh, I know I can't be perfect. It's not real. Like, perfection's not real. So what if it is this? What if perfect is coming to the revelation that you don't have to seek for that anymore. You don't have to punish yourself for that anymore. So this is what my wife said to me when I said, what would you say to someone who feels as though other people's feelings are their responsibility, their burden, that they need to fix, that they need to make things right for other people? And my wife said, I would say, imagine the personal freedom you could experience if you relinquished the need to manage and control other people's expectations of you. That's worth exploring.
Wow, Willow.
Well, she meditates a lot.
Yeah. It's like, she can sub in for me any day. Yeah. You know what? She really loves a good poop joke, but my wife spends a lot of time on mindfulness. She has what she calls like a mindful practice, and she'll practice different mindful approaches. And I think one of the things she's practicing right now is relinquishing control of expectations of things around her, desire for things to be different, things like that. So we want to, my wife and I, but mostly my wife, want to invite you, dear letter writer, to imagine the personal freedom. How free would you feel if you just said, you know what, it makes me feel something that my roommate is uncomfortable, but that feeling is not my responsibility to fix. You know, I can free myself of that. I can just sit in those feelings instead of letting them rule my definitions of myself. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And imagine what you could do with that energy that wasn't about frantically fretting about whether or not your friend is uncomfortable too, right? Like, imagine what other places that energy could go into, whether that's like care for yourself or care for the things that you love or care for your friend and your boyfriend, right? Like there's so much potential there that's being blocked by this like false sort of mandate that you have that you're in charge of everyone else's feelings.
And that's a bad block, not a good block.
Yeah, for sure. To be clear. Yeah. And there's just a world of opportunity that is not fretting. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm saying this to myself too.
Yeah,
so,
no, I know, literally.
This is really helpful for me.
Yeah. I love this letter and I love this response. Pile of dust. We hope that you feel heard. We hope that you feel loved and listened to. And we also hope you feel a little bit freer to accept the love around you and to accept the love we're giving you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for writing. We love you.
All right. Our next letter comes to us from Nuva Ring, whose pronouns are she, her, who is writing to us from a land with no reproductive freedom. Hi, y'all. Thanks for everything you do. I have a weird one in light of all of the conversations about Roe versus Wade. Here goes. My husband, 32, he, him, and I, 33, she, her, are sexually active and don't want kids.
Sure.
We think they're cute, but they're just not our style. And we mean absolutely no shame on people who love and want them. I have a lot of medical conditions and can't take birth control. And he has a latex allergy, go figure. So we use other methods of prevention. But honestly, I had a lot of peace of mind knowing that if I needed one, I could get an abortion. Well, that is looking a lot less certain for me now. Our state is one that will likely repeal abortion access ASAP, and this is a big stressor for me. I just talked to my husband about getting a vasectomy since they're a relatively non-invasive procedure, and we definitely don't want children. And he basically told me no, and that he would rather I talk to my doctor about something I can do. He knows my complicated medical history, and it just felt so dismissive of him. I told him we didn't need to rush into anything and that I would be happy to support him in talking about this decision more, but he asked me not to bring it up again. I guess my question is it okay for me to feel frustrated? Why does all of the family planning or family unplanning labor fall on women? Why does he seem to want me to take this one on alone? Was my suggestion really that unreasonable? I welcome all and any thoughts you might have. It's a scary time out here, and y'all are making this world feel a little less overwhelming, even if you don't answer this on air. All right, Nuva Ring, thank you so much for writing in, for listening, for trusting us with this very important and timely question. I'm sorry you had this experience with your husband. Sam and I thought that this would be a great opportunity to talk to our resident 98% straight heterosexual male, aka our producer, Spencer Wirth-Davis. Welcome to the primary episode, Spencer. Hello.
Hi. Thank you for that lovely intro.
Yeah, that's how we refer to you always when you're not around. Just FYI.
I'll
yes,
take it.
The 98%.
We don't say your name. We just say the 98.
Straight heterosexual. I just wanted to hit it home that you
98%, but then really double down on the sure.
Yeah.
Like you're not all straight, but you're definitely straight heterosexual.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Anyway, we wanted to talk to Spencer. We wanted to bring Spencer on the show. Particularly because our lovely producer has proudly and recently gotten a vasectomy because him and his wife do not want to have children. And I thought it was a really important, impactful opportunity for you to be able to tell us about that experience.
Sure. Do you want me to go through my experience before we talk about the letter at all? Because I have lots of thoughts about that also.
I have a lot of thoughts about the letter too.
Yeah. Well, I just thought I just want you to tell me about your experience getting a vasectomy first, and then we'll unpack the letter second. Sound good?
Sure.
And we can stew in our feelings about the letter, like steep, like tea.
Yeah, my favorite.
Okay, great.
They'll just get stronger as you talk.
Got it. Well, they're very easy.
Yes.
It took probably 15 minutes.
Yes.
Wow.
And how did you? So, I know that you had to go to your doctor and say, "I want this." What was the experience from that point on?
Sure. So, yeah, you have to do a consult first, where they just basically hand you a pamphlet and say, "Here's what we're gonna do. Is this what you want to do?" And you either say yes or no.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Because as men, we get to make our own decisions about our own bodies, and doctors don't question them, and you don't have to bring your partners to those appointments.
Ayo!
Hey, isn't that great?
I mean, yes, it is, but we should do the same thing for women.
Yeah.
So I went and talked to the doctor who would be doing the procedure if I decide to do the procedure, and we talked for 5 minutes about what the procedure and the recovery would be. And then I scheduled an appointment on the way out for like a couple weeks later. And then they write you a prescription, or they wrote me, maybe it's different in other places, a prescription for exactly one Valium to take before the procedure. It's like a, well, I was going to say it's like a baby Valium, but you shouldn't give babies Valium.
You should not give babies Valium.
But like
I'm taking notes, Spencer.
Let me tell you how babies work.
No, I'll text you later and say, so I've got this Valium. Just kidding.
But should I give it to my baby?
Yeah. Does it need to be pink in order for me to give it to her?
Yeah,
or like,
right. Yeah, make sure you don't get the blue one.
Yeah.
In case you're just like, anxious ahead of time.
Yes, that's not like a pain thing. Pain management is something else.
Yeah. So you go to like for me, it was like a Health Partners specialty center in an old movie theater that had been turned into a Health Partners clinic.
What theater did you have to go into?
Yeah.
And they're like, go to theater 4 for your vasectomy.
I'm pretty sure I saw Spice World in like the same physical location that I got a vasectomy like 20 years later.
Spice World.
That's amazing.
Spice World.
That is the full circle that I've been hoping for in my life.
Yeah. That just proves that the Spice Girls are like true feminism.
Yes. Sure. Yeah.
No.
It doesn't, but I'm willing to accept that statement.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So yeah, you go in and they give you like a shot of novocaine so you don't feel anything. And then I didn't watch because I didn't really want to watch.
Yeah.
But you sit on an operating table.
You sit on it?
Yeah, it's like it's like a dentist chair kind of where, it reclines.
Okay. And now, does the shot of novocaine, like, can you rate it on a pain scale? I want people to know so that they can play this for their partners or for themselves.
Yeah.
I'm serious. Like, I think we should know what these procedures feel like so we can anticipate them and that know that we can handle them.
Yeah. If you've had a shot of novocaine before, it's like for dental work or something, it's similar. Like it hurts for a few seconds and then a few seconds later, you don't feel anything. It's obviously a little less pleasant.
Like, where do you get the shot?
Yeah, getting a shot in
is it like right in
the scrotum is not ideal.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, Sure.
I guess neither is.
But like
a
hysterectomy is not great either.
So we'll get to all that stuff.
We'll get to the.
That's why I asked where you wanted to start on this. Yes. Relatively speaking, it's essentially nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you get a shot of novocaine. You wait a few seconds for it to kick in.
Yeah.
And then they make one tiny little incision. They sever the two vas deferens inside of your scrotum. And then they put like literally one stitch in to close up. It's like, there's video now, I guess. So it's like, the tiniest little cut, one stitch. And then 10 minutes later, you walk out of there and go home. And you ice your balls for 2 days. Tell me about the healing. Yeah. So for like
ice your balls for 2 days.
For 2 days, I didn't really like do any physical activity. I mostly like sat around and kept an ice pack on my balls. And then a couple more days of like, not running or riding my bike or having sex or like things like that. And then,
what did it feel like during the recovery time? Like, did you feel like you needed the ice pack? Like, did it feel sore
just for, like,
afterwards?
There's some soreness. It's mostly just for swelling.
Yeah. Okay.
And like,
but you weren't like ever like the pain scale. You weren't ever.
I don't think I took any.
Like, dang.
I don't think I took any. Like, they don't give you any prescription anything,
right.
And I don't think I took
and
ibuprofen
you didn't take
or anything.
Like ibuprofen.
No, it's honestly the pain afterwards is minimal.
Okay.
It's just sort of uncomfortable because like, you have a stitch in your scrotum and you don't want it to come out.
Yeah. Tiny little. Yeah. And then you have to wait for a certain amount of time to like ensure that it is effective.
Yeah. So after a week.
Before you have unprotected sex.
Right. Yeah. So after a week, you can pretty much do whatever you want or whatever's comfortable. Like, once the stitch comes out, if it doesn't hurt, go for it. Like you can.
Yeah.
I was riding my bike like 8 days later or something.
Yeah.
And then, it's different doctors recommend slightly different things. Some recommend like a number of ejaculations before getting checked. Some recommend like a length of time that I think, roughly correlates to a number of like an average number of ejaculations spread out across time. Yeah. So it's like, like 50.
I want to see the research on that one.
Well, honestly, so my doctor told me like, come back in like 3 months, and others will be like, once you've come 15 times, you're probably good to get checked. So it's like somewhere
funny.
in between.
Okay.
Sure.
And then, you bring a semen sample to a lab, and they say either there's still sperm here, you got to wait a couple more weeks, or there aren't sperm here, you're good to go.
Cool. Fascinating. I want to just say really quickly, like, so you went to the doctor, got a referral, came back, went again for the procedure.
Not even a referral. Like I made an appointment with the doctor who did the procedure. Just online, I was like, I would like a vasectomy schedule.
Yeah. I'm thinking about in comparison to what people have to do to get birth control or something more intense, how many appointments we're talking about. So you had to go to this location you had to leave your house 3 times, right?
A consult, the actual procedure, and then like the follow-up was I brought a plastic cup of semen to a lab and handed it to somebody, and then they called me later.
Left.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's what I wanted to confirm. Because I think it's honestly, thank you for being so transparent and willing to talk about this on our show. Because I think it's so important for us to know what these procedures look and feel like, and also like for us folks with social anxiety or I know you and I both practice making phone calls before we make them, for folks who feel anxious about what does it mean to drop off a cup of cum to a lab, I think it's important to spell it all out.
They give you a nice paper bag with your name on it. So you're not just carrying you can't. Yeah, you hand someone a lunch bag. It's not just like a
Starbucks cup.
Hey, you want those?
Okay, well
you don't have any sperm, but your semen is highly caffeinated.
Anyway, so thank you. And then I guess do we want to just get into the as the person who could impregnate someone at one point in a partnership, and a partnership that you came to by deciding, you two decided you did not want to have children. Tell me your feelings about this letter, or
No, I'm curious for you, Spencer. Also, what was the decision-making process like to get to, I want to have a vasectomy? And was there any I don't know,
pushback,
masculinity issues that
that's a great question.
I think because I think that a lot of people who have penises and identify as men probably are thinking it's going to make me less of a man if I am not shooting sperm out of my penis, right? So I'm just curious if any of that came up for you, or how you approached it.
Yeah, for my wife and me, it was once we decided that we didn't want to have kids, it was sort of the obvious choice for some of the reasons we've already talked about. It's cheapest. It is highly effective. It's minimally invasive. Our insurance will just cover it. I paid $0 to have this done.
Oh, good to know. Good to know.
Even if you don't have insurance, it's at most $1,500, which compared to even the cost of birth control over time is pretty.
Yeah, all of our listeners who don't live in America are what?
Yeah, that too. So it just kind of was objectively the right answer for us in terms of all of those factors. And also even hormonal birth control is way more invasive in terms of the effect it has on your body over time.
Even the process of having an IUD put in can be more invasive than that too, right?
I'm sure
that
it's
only
way
lasts
more
a
painful.
few years, whereas a vasectomy lasts forever.
Yeah, it's 15
and took 10 minutes.
It was 15 minutes and it's permanent.
Yeah.
Thank you both for talking about this. My love for you is growing as we speak.
To answer this,
it was already so big, though. How can your little heart handle all of it?
It's huge right now.
To answer the second part of your question, Sam, I didn't particularly struggle with that because like it was really the masculinity stuff, because it's like my wife was very supportive in us making this decision, and it was a choice that we made together. And so like the only person that would have had to even know was super supportive.
Oh my God, that is such a good...
That's a really good insight, and for sure.
If I like to talk about it because I think men should talk about it and not like be scared of it. But like no one would ever have to know. Nothing, like literally nothing changes other than the sperm doesn't get out. Like it's
anywhere.
Still, it's not even that you stop making it. It's just like in there instead of out there.
I just want y'all to know that Spencer and I are at the level of a friendship in which I had him text me essentially a play-by-play of this vasectomy.
Yeah.
And we had an intense conversation. Two that come to mind. One where I was like, but what happens to it in your body? And he had to explain to me that it just sort of like dissipates, because our body like gets rid of things inside of it all the time.
Eventually your body actually develops antibodies because it's like, well, this thing isn't useful anymore. So we just,
that's fascinating.
We'll stop it.
I wish my body did that. Semen. Okay. Anyway. And then the other thing that I really enjoyed.
Semen's not gross, Sierra. Come on now.
No, it's not. I'm saying like I was doing an impression of my body rejecting it. Like if my body created antibodies.
Sure.
Got it. The second thing I deeply enjoyed of this whole process is I think I was on the phone with you when you got the email back from the lab and we were trying to interpret the findings of how many sperm they found in your
You were the
semen.
only person at the time because you were trying to get pregnant. I was like,
so we were like sharing weird body
things.
Who
do I know who I could call about this who might know what some of these words mean?
Oh, yeah. Because I had to like,
I was like, non-modal? Is that good or bad for me?
Do we want to be supermodal?
Right.
Or
are things supposed to be moving or staying put?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, loving this. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the letter, Spencer.
Sure. I guess to start, I think it's totally fair to be frustrated and or upset with this situation.
Yeah.
I don't think she's being unreasonable at all.
Right.
And in fact, I think she suggested what is probably the most like objectively reasonable solution to this question that they're dealing with.
For sure.
Yep. Yeah.
So nothing you suggested or none of the things you're thinking about are like unreasonable, even if you're being made to feel that way. To answer another question, family planning falls to women because patriarchy.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
because men have been allowed to not participate in that, and
have benefited from it.
Yeah, and some men would like to continue being allowed to do that and benefiting from that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's a healthy way to approach partnership, or especially this part of partnership. But I think that's where that comes from. Like, there's no other source. I don't think.
Yeah.
It's concerning to me that he doesn't want to participate in this
or talk about it again.
Yeah, I mean,
the not talking about it part was like, woof.
That is being unreasonable.
Yeah.
We've hit
also
a nerve.
like asking your doctor about other options. Like, what are you talking about?
Well, I mean, we don't have specifics about like, she said she has had some issues with birth control or however she worded it. So like, maybe there are other options available, but like straight up not talking about the obvious one is concerning. Like refusing to engage is not okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sam, do you have any thoughts as a person who could get a vasectomy?
Yeah, I mean, I could. I don't think it would be necessary or useful for me, given the type of sex that I have. But no, I think I want to say that your partner is being unreasonable in this for sure, and that like unreasonableness like makes sense to me in terms of like why it would happen, right? Because we live in a society that says that like people with uteruses are responsible for not getting pregnant, like, and that is their job, and that like the people who impregnate them have no responsibility for it. And because like there's a lot of shit tied up in penises and like masculinity and like people's understanding of themselves as like men because of like the penis that they have and the fact that it works in the way that it's supposed to.
Your penis isn't going to go away or stop working if you get a vasectomy.
Yeah, no, it's still there, right?
Not like
absolutely.
What are you talking about? They don't just chop your dick off?
Dude, okay. Just quick aside. I Googled something vasectomy related. I don't remember what my exact search was before we started this. And the suggested questions on Google are alarming.
Oh, give me a couple.
Let's see if I can find it again. It was like, do you still come after having a vasectomy? Or like, does vasectomy affect size? Or like all these just like, I guess someone's asking these. Let's see.
Yeah.
Will I last longer after a vasectomy?
Ooh. Do you?
No. Does sperm taste different after vasectomy?
I wonder if you could get like, nope, I'm not even
Interesting.
gonna,
First of all, it's not bare. So the word you're looking for is semen. And secondly, you'd have to have an extremely, oh, Jesus.
Sensitive palate.
Katie, can I read that on the pod? Was that a yes?
Oh my God.
My wife just texted me, I don't think so.
Katie for the win.
Oh boy. So apparently people need some clarification around these things based on Google's suggested searches. Sorry, Sam,
well, and like let's also remember too that like society infantilizes men, right? It treats them like babies all the time.
But we're
so, like,
also
the idea
like
that,
extremely
like, a man
powerful at the same time. We are both babies and capable of
so
everything.
Let me tell you guys about powerful babies. I'm the only one qualified here.
It's true.
No, and so like it treats men like babies, so like men should never have to experience any sort of discomfort, whereas like women should like have their whole uteruses taken out because like that's a reasonable thing to happen and should be expected of them.
Yep.
Right, absolutely. And it's like, so like the way that he's responding, like it feels like developmentally appropriate for him is how I'm thinking about it. Like he's like responding in a way that I would expect based on like the patriarchy and like his place in it. And at the same time, it's like a completely unreasonable thing for him to not want to talk about because it is the most reasonable thing. Like it is the most logical choice in the situation.
His position
is to do this thing.
His position is unreasonable and understandable.
Expected? Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, expected, I think is like
disappointing, but not surprising.
Yeah, that's it right there. But also like surprising. Like I'm still fascinated by how one-sided family planning is. Like the research, the money behind it. Like it's just fascinating, and as you said, heavily disappointed. To our letter writer, like if you haven't already taken this from us, you have every right to be frustrated. You absolutely shouldn't be shouldering this responsibility, both physically and mentally alone. You shouldn't have to do that. And this should be a conversation that you bring back to the table and honestly force him to be a part of it because you are his abstraction. Is that a word?
It is a word. Depends on what the rest of your sentence is.
But I don't know where we're going. Yeah, exactly.
Like taking himself out of the conversation.
Oh, I don't think that's what it means, but let's go for it.
Just going with sounds, just making sounds.
We got you. Keep going.
Okay. I'm running on very little sleep. For sure. What's the word I'm looking for?
Removal?
Extraction.
Oh, nailed it, Sam.
I hate myself. Yeah. His extraction.
Don't hate yourself. You just you just said a wrong word.
That seems like a bit of an overreaction. You're doing fine.
his extraction of himself from this situation is forcing you to handle it by yourself. Yeah. So it is absolutely appropriate in your partnership for you to, I'm going to use the word, force him to be a part of this conversation and a part of this decision making. You can't force him to do anything to his body. But this is absolutely something you can ask him to participate more in.
I think it's necessary in order to have a partnership. Like, if you can't talk to your partner about things that affect both of you, what are we doing?
Yeah. And I also just want to like validate your fears and the fears of like many of our listeners. The threat of this option being taken off the table, I know is a contentious one for some people. But as somebody who recently had a baby, it has made me only more resolute in the fact that we undervalue the literal labor of having a baby. Pregnancy is life-altering and not in a romanticized way as we like to talk about it. And having a baby is life-altering. And the way that we undervalue the bodies that are forced into doing that at times is depressing and shocking. And to our letter writer, like, your fear is totally valid, and I'm sorry you're experiencing this. If I cannot imagine being forced into doing what I just did willingly, because I wanted that pregnancy and I wanted that baby. But the carrying and the delivery of her was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And it affected my daily life, and it still does. My body is still recovering and will be different and changed forever. And the fact that we force people into doing that instead of having them have a 15-minute one-stitch operation is, I'm losing my articulateness, but y'all know that I'm just feeling my feelings about this.
For sure. And I think it's important to recognize that, like, you're right in this situation, letter writer, Nuva Ring, and that being right doesn't always make us effective. So I would also encourage you to think about how you're going to have this conversation with him too, right? Because I think it's important to recognize that, like, he's making this decision, or he's not wanting to engage in this conversation, probably not because he's like an awful person, but because of like the things that he's been thinking and feeling about for a long time. So I would encourage you, as you are approaching this, to remember, like, even though you're in disagreement, even though he's being unreasonable, that you're still on the same team, right? You still have the same goals, and practice some curiosity with him about why he's having this reaction to the idea of getting a vasectomy. Because like going in guns blazing and being like, you need to do this, you're absolutely wrong, is probably not going to get you the desired outcome. But I don't say that in a way to like make you feel less valid in your frustration with him, because like that's 100% real. I'm just thinking about like, how can you be effective in approaching him with this conversation?
Totally. I totally agree.
I would encourage him, or if there's a way for you to encourage him, letter writer, to talk to some men in his life, because I bet some of them have had a vasectomy. And maybe he could have a conversation similar to the one we're having with someone in his life who has gone through the thing that is apparently very intimidating for him right now. Or email justbreakuppod@gmail.com, and I'll talk to him about how it's like literally the lowest bar thing you can do to support your partner and yourself, and there's like nothing but good outcomes from it. And that one stitch doesn't even leave a scar. You'll be totally fine. But yeah, I've found after having a vasectomy that like a lot of my friends and people in my life had questions about it that like were maybe similar to some of the hesitations that your partner's having. And yeah, were easily clarified in a brief conversation. So
yeah. Thank you, Spencer, for being a part of our episode. Thank you for responding to my text message inviting you on our show at 6:50 a.m. this morning.
You're very welcome.
I texted him in all caps. Good morning. I have an idea.
I was cleaning dog puke off the kitchen floor because Marcy was scared of a thunderstorm that he barfed this morning. So I was
and for the y'all
that
don't know, Marcy is Spencer's 100-pound golden doodle.
Yes.
There we go.
It's the size of a small horse. Yep.
Correct.
A large horse, really. All right. Thank you so much, letter writer. Thank you, Spencer, for being here and for everything you do for our podcast. Anuva Ring, we hope this helps, and we hope you feel supported and loved.
All right. Our third letter comes from What is a Boundary, whose pronouns are she, her, and who is writing from the void. Hi, Sam and Sierra. I ended things with a guy, he, him, his, I'd been seeing casually for a few months, and now I'm second-guessing my decision. For quick context, we're both in our mid-20s, we've been hanging out semi-regularly, and had expressed that we'd liked each other, but hadn't put a label on it. There are many things I like about him. He's goofy and sweet, fully commits to everything he does, and makes me feel comfortable and secure when I was with him, but I was still in the process of figuring out whether he was someone I could be compatible with long-term. Mainly, there was the line between the intentional goofiness and potential immaturity. I liked him, though, and since we were taking it slow with seemingly no expectations of a more serious commitment, I was comfy waiting and figuring it out. The night I ended it, we'd chatted a bit, but I went to bed early and he went out. I woke up at 3 a.m. to him ringing my doorbell incessantly. He was drunk and said that he wanted to see me and sleep over. He'd woken up my whole house, who were understandably pissed off. One housemate told him as much, and he'd nonchalantly brushed it off. I was pretty upset and asked him to call an Uber home. What shocked me is that he was surprised. He said he'd have been happy if I'd shown up at 3 a.m. unexpectedly and was clearly hurt that I was not happy to see him and even made him leave. The next morning, he apologized and said he realized it was rude. It didn't feel like enough, like he recognized what a boundary violation that was or how upset my house was. I'd have been falling over myself to apologize if I was in his shoes. That and deciding it was a good idea to come over in the first place and not realizing that he'd fucked up when he arrived and saw how upset everyone was equals a big red flag for me and a sign of immaturity. I'd also been deciding how committed I was to the relationship and how much I liked him, and this forced my hand. So I ended things with him. And now I don't know if I made the right choice. I feel like I overreacted. Was coming over late at night that crazy? I definitely don't want it to happen again, and he said unprompted that it wouldn't, but I can't tell if this was a drunken oops, sprinkled with some light boundary crossing, or a huge red flag. Part of me wishes I'd made it clear this couldn't happen again, or anything of the sort, but kept trying. I really miss him. I think I'm having trouble seeing this clearly because I was in a pretty toxic relationship a few years back with a partner, he, him, his, who would cross all kinds of boundaries, think reading texts, being jealous, yelling. This toxic ex would justify his actions by saying that he hadn't known that was a boundary he shouldn't cross. He'd say he wouldn't do it again, and then next week he'd be violating some new boundary that I hadn't expressly mentioned. It felt like I was playing whack-a-mole. And so when this new guy showed up at my house unannounced, violating a huge boundary I thought was implicitly set, I got freaked out about falling into that pattern again. But I know we're two different people, and new guy doesn't have the jealous and abusive tendencies of my toxic ex. He may deserve a second chance, but I don't have any grace or tolerance left. I can't tell what to do. I can't tell how big of a red flag this is. I'm worried I overreacted, and I'm worried that I'm trying to rationalize this because I miss him. What do you think of this? How do I tell when to give someone another chance and when to cut loose? And if it's this early in a relationship, is it worth trying to salvage? Regardless of if you read this on the podcast or not, many warm thanks for the advice, wisdom, and love over the years. The podcast has helped me process my terrible relationship, make wiser relationship choices, and brought me a lot of comfort during quarantine. Thank you both for your love and work. Heart emoji.
Oh, thank you so much for writing and for trusting us with this question and for listening. So just caveat, like, I don't know the extent and authenticity of your feelings for this person. I don't know how well the relationship went and like what exactly, how true the emotions are that are missing him right now. But I'm just going to work under the assumption that this is not a relationship that needs to be rekindled based on the way you were describing it before. Like, you weren't really you were like, I'm not really sure if this is somebody that I wanted to pursue long term. I was happy to like see how it worked, how it went, you know, but like you weren't like gung ho, but you were like, yeah, cool, I'm enjoying this. But I want to offer, like, maybe you did wait it out and you got your answer, you know, like you were seeing how it was going. And I want to affirm that it like gone, went there, you responded appropriately or appropriately to that moment. And now we don't have to necessarily look back and second guess it because you waited it out and you got your answer. Like, this person's not for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that, and I do think that there is some possibility of looking at this, and right, like it's a great example of where we can change our mind too.
Oh my God,
right?
so
like,
funny.
This could be an instance where you can change your mind.
90% of the time, Sam and I freestyle this episode, and then like 10% of the time we'll be like, so what do you think about this? What do you think about, you know, whatever? And we obviously didn't confer this episode.
Mm-hmm. No. So we have different opinions.
Well, I think this person had like no self-awareness. And like, if you're turned off by that, then
for sure.
Cool. And also you can change your mind.
Absolutely. And I think what you said in the letter about like, we're two different people operating in two different ways means that we could have very different interpretations of what happened that night too, right? Like he said, he would be like, I would be excited if you came over, and you're like, I wouldn't. And part of relationships is learning these things about each other. And sometimes that happens in ways that are like big, like, oh shit, we fucked up moments.
Yes.
And those
and what
happens
does this
in
mean?
places, right? And they happen in places where it's like, oh, cool, we eat at different times, right?
Yes.
Interesting, right? Like, and there's a whole gamut of things in between those. Yeah, right. Like, and I do want to create space for the idea of like, we can have this big sort of like culture clash happen in a relationship, and it doesn't mean that like the relationship is doomed, and it can actually serve us really well to step back and be like, I'm having a big reaction to this. Where is that coming from? And where are places where we might just be coming at this from different directions, right?
Yes.
Like, if his immaturity is a turn off to you, cool. Like, don't date the man. That's fine. And I appreciate the self-work that you're doing in like looking back on this and being like, okay, was I projecting my own understanding of the world onto him? Was I expecting him to know something that he didn't know implicitly, right? And am I doing that because I have had this relationship where I would not name explicit boundaries, and then they would be crossed, even though those were like big bad things, right? Like reading people's texts. It's kind of like,
do that.
Yeah, that feels like a culturally agreed upon, like, let's not do this thing. But you know, might not be. And so like, I think that there is an opportunity for you to like look back and be like, you know, I'm realizing that I had an outside response to that. It wasn't necessarily the reaction that I would have wanted to have. And I want to trust that he's doing something different. So I'm going to change my mind, and I'm going to give this man a second chance. Like, that's okay too. And so is being like, that was a sign of immaturity that I don't want to have to teach him how to do this anymore. Right? Like, I don't want to have to be this explicit about like, don't show up to my house at 3 a.m. Like, that's also okay. But just want to create space for the idea of like, we can have these moments of culture clash, and it doesn't mean that anything's wrong. It just means that we're having a clash of our understandings of the world. Love that.
And also, we're just going to give like totally opposing advice.
Yeah,
well, because I didn't know. I wasn't prepared. I was going to say also that it is okay to miss someone that you're not supposed to be with. Like, I think we don't give ourselves that permission enough, and we often like give that emotion of like nostalgia for somebody a lot of power, and we think that it means a lot of power. We don't necessarily let ourselves feel a missing emotion for someone with any brevity, you know. But it's okay to miss somebody that like you don't want to be with, or that your time has been spent on, and that you don't return to. You may miss like the act of making plans with them. You may miss their company. You may miss not being alone. That could show up in so many different ways, and it's okay for us to feel that, and also say like, I'm gonna reinforce the reaction that I had after assessing it. Although I love everything that you said. It's a perfect example of like, there's no one size fit all advice on our show. And also, there's, especially when it comes to like boundaries and responses, we get a lot of letters of like, how do I know what is my authentic response and my response to conditioning that I was taught in relationships or childhood, and sometimes fuck if I know.
Yeah, right.
But sometimes we just don't, or we have to go with our instinct, and
it's like also such a high expectation to place on ourselves too.
Yeah.
Of like, I need to respond authentically and not from my conditioning, even though like the conditioning is like so baked in that it is like kind of authentic.
Yes,
right?
Totally.
Of like, and again, it's just one of those funny things that we do, that folks do to like make themselves feel bad. And I say this like lovingly because I do.
At ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
At me.
Yeah. But it is a great example of the fact that like all of these things that Sierra and I are saying are true at the same time, which is like why it's so complicated being a human, and that there is no right choice in this situation. There are just choices.
Right.
So like the only thing that you can do is decide what you want to do and go with it. And again, you have the opportunity to change your mind, right? You have the opportunity to say like, oh, this isn't working, and I do want to get back together with him, or ask him out again, or I asked him out and now I don't want to be with him anymore. Like, cool, you can change your mind, right? And so I don't want it to be so fraught that it feels like there's nothing available to you, right? Like there's a lot of thinking that's happening, and that thinking unlocks a number of different options available. And so like you don't have to get into a paralysis around what am I supposed to do in this situation? Because like whatever you do is going to be the thing that you do, and that thing that you do is going to be the same or different than the thing you do right after that, right? Like we're just making choices. So just pick one.
Yeah.
And either one.
See how it goes. Worst advice,
and then if you don't like it,
fucking podcast ever.
Do something else.
So just like choose it and then like do something else.
Okay. I say give him another go. Sierra says don't do it.
I love this. We haven't disagreed in a while.
Decide who you like best, and then pick that person's advice.
Yeah. That is true. I wouldn't give him another go because I have like a boundary with drunk people. Like I just don't.
You do really not like drunk people.
I just respond so poorly to them. It makes me feel unsafe. Anyway.
For real. And again, it's like, what about your experiences have led you to this moment to have this reaction that you had?
Totally.
And
perfect
like,
example.
Those things are valid and real, and you get to decide like, cool, that means that's the boundary. It's like I just don't interact with drunk people.
Yeah, technically,
right? Like,
I just don't fight with them. I don't fight with
you don't fight
drunk
with them.
people.
Yes,
if they're
absolutely.
drunk and we're having an argument, I will literally be like, goodbye. I'm not. I will talk to you when you're sober. When you blow into this thing and blow a .08 or whatever.
Did you know those things are highly inaccurate?
Oh, really?
I was just listening to a You're Wrong About episode about this, where like the breathalyzer tests they do for folks like in the field are calibrated incorrectly, are used incorrectly. They have frequently give like false positives or false negatives. And so like, it's one of those things where you're like, we pretend like this is science and it's not actually science. It's like completely made up, and like user error is like such a big thing. But it was one of the many things that they talked about in that episode where I was just like, yeah, this is just in there. It's just like
in there.
Somebody told me this and I was like, yes, that's a fact, that breathalyzers are things that are always effective and correct. And I never questioned it.
I appreciate that.
Tangent. Sorry. Back to you, Boundary.
Yeah. So that's it though. I mean, we love you and we see you in the complexity of this, and you're allowed to change your mind, and you're also allowed to miss somebody you're not supposed to be with. We're just here to give you permission to be whatever.
Yeah, you're also allowed to not change your mind too, right? Yeah. Like all of those things.
Yeah. Okay, my darling, we love you. We hope this helps.
We love you. Thank you so much for writing. Oh, before we talk about the blind date, last week I did the blind date of Heartstopper, the show on Netflix about the two boys in high school who fall in love with each other. And we have gotten so many letters, people who are like, I just watched Heartstopper and now I'm having an existential crisis. So like, just beware that it may invoke a particular type of like queer existential crisis in you as you're watching the show. Just like wanted to give that warning, because it's funny that we keep like, it's like a theme now of like,
oh my God, funny.
So many people are like, I just watched Heartstopper and now I don't know anything about my life or what I'm supposed to be doing. It's like,
oh, good.
Okay.
Oh, good.
We're going to be all right.
Cute,
I promise.
Cute. Love that for us.
All right, everyone. This brings us to the blind date segment of our episode, which is when we try and hook you up with something we think you're really going to like. This week, we want to send you home with
a television show that's like been out, but like I watched it when I was on my maternity leave and I found it incredibly charming. It is The Sex Lives of College Girls. Did you watch that or have you heard of it? It's a television series from Mindy Kaling and it's on HBO. I thought it was so charming. The main character is played by Timothy Chalamet's. Is that how you say his last name?
Chalamet.
Oh, yeah, I just like misread it. Chalamet's sister, Pauline, and she's hysterical.
Great.
It's so funny. The whole show is so funny. It's about like 4 college roommates and their sex lives and their first year at college. From the title. Yeah. It's just like very charming, very funny. I thought the writing was great. And yeah. Just like an entertaining television show that I was like, I don't hate this. I actually love it. So it's called The Sex Lives of College Girls, and you can watch it now on HBO. Sorry, I'm like 6 months late.
Never apologize.
Okay, I'm looking at the title or the thing on Google right now, and it came out in 2021.
Listen, you had things to do in 2021.
Literally. Vomit every day. Speaking of the physical labor of being pregnant. Anyway.
That's right. That was a rough time for us. We'd have to work around your morning sickness.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. You can like us on Facebook and you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at JustBreakUpPod. This literally keeps the mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need to. Nope, that's not what I say. You can like us and follow us. That's it. That's the end of the sentence. Go for it.
Leave that in.
We've been doing this for literally 4 years.
You can slide into our DMs, send us your favorite relationship meme, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart and apparently reviews of Netflix shows at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
Please consider
supporting us.
Okay. Remember to like or follow or subscribe us and wherever you get your podcasts.
Subscribe us.
Give us a 5-star rating and review wherever that's happening. And also consider supporting us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get an additional bonus weekly episode, audio and visual, and cool things that other visual, audio and video, and other cool perks, which we talked about at the beginning of this episode.
Yes. The new $10 level, which is you'll get to hang out with us once a month live on like a AMA or an interview or something like that. And if you subscribe annually, you'll get 2 months off for free of that annual subscription. And at the $10 levels annually, you will get your letter answered by Sam and I, guaranteed. So check that out. It's a great way to support us and to make sure the show keeps happening for all of our wonderful Just Break Up community. Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music recording, editing, and producing all magical things by our local vasectomy
victim. Our VV.
Spencer has 3 new nicknames. VV. Cool Lips. Not going to explain that one. Just going to put it out there. And Sam and I have been calling him Tech Daddy because he's been helping us out with some new... Tech Daddy. Anyway, Spencer Wirth-Davis, check out his podcast, Finding Quantum Quest. The never-ending great episode comes to a close. Remember, you are worthy of that good friendship. You are worthy of having that conversation. You are worthy of bodily autonomy and freedom of the expectations of other people. You are worthy of it. Believe it. Stop believing the lie that you're not. And if all else fails,
just break up.